Being a farmer in Brazil has never been cooler. Or at least that's the impression you might get from social media. There are viral music videos featuring farmers with cowboy hats boasting about their wealth, and also the influencers with big followings offering a taste of rural life in deep Brazil.
My farm is my little corner of the world. I often joke it's paradise for me.
But not everyone buys into the dream. Some say that beyond the videos of tractors and the snapshots of idyllic landscapes, something more troubling is at play.
When you are selling ideology, then we need to be a little bit more cautious, I think.
Some claim a battle for hearts and minds is going on.
Our Brazil is that of rodeos, leather boots, cowboy hats, small towns.
A battle to change the way big agriculture is seen, not as a villain that, according to scientists, is helping drive global warming, but rather as an economic hero. And it's all unfolding on social media. I'm Marco Silva, and this is BBC Trending.
To start us off on this journey, I want to tell you about Brazilian musical duo Os Agroboy. And just to be clear, what you're hearing right now is not their music. For copyright reasons, I can't play you their songs, but they're super easy to find here on YouTube. And the first thing that strikes you when you watch their videos is the duo's looks. Cowboy hats, blue jeans with big belt buckles, tight tank tops, checkered shirts, sports jerseys. Then there are the tattoos, the leather boots, the bling. Think country star look with a few touches of hip-hop. Gabriel, one half of Os Agroboy, told me their work draws from Brazilian country music, sertanejo.
Já existiam antes artistas que
There were already artists who sang with a deeper voice style, wore hats, boots, and played caipira guitar. Agronejo is a movement that defends and celebrates the rural producer, the countryside. All of this unified with this more modern beat.
This new genre Gabriel mentioned there, agronejo, has only really become popular in recent years, with artists like Os Agroboy leading the charge. They're drawing millions of people on streaming platforms and on their socials. So, what is behind their success? Here's Gabriel's bandmate, Jotinha.
For a long time here in Brazil, anyone who wore boots and hats in the big city was seen as bizarre, the butt of a joke. Not anymore. Today, people are proud of being from the countryside, and we really represent that movement.
A couple of themes often come up in their songs. There's a lot of partying, a fair amount of sex, but also rags to riches tales. Stories of farmers who've turned a small inheritance into big estates. Praise for farmers, and a portrait of a thriving agricultural industry, including activities like crop or livestock production. Gabriel again.
é totalmente fiel à realidade porque
It is completely faithful to reality because what drives Brazil today is agriculture. It is the rural worker who gets up early, plants soybeans, and harvests coffee.
According to the duo, it's at agricultural shows and rodeos they perform most often. And like other artists within the genre, they too have worked with companies from the agricultural industry.
a gente tem sim
We have
parcerias
partnerships
com
with
empresas
machinery
mais
companies, agricultural machinery, right? Because it is the truth of what we sing.
But some say that agronejo doesn't quite capture the full picture of Brazilian agriculture, and that this is not by accident.
Are you a fan? Do you listen to agronejo yourself? Is it part of your playlist?
Not at all. Not at all.
Deborah Salles is a researcher at NetLab, which is part of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro.
In that lab, we research how public opinion is shaped through influence operations online.
In other
on
words,
social
how the
media, so
internet can be
how
used to
strategic
change the way we
campaigns
feel
are
about certain
carried out.
topics.
And the environmental issues in Brazil are one of these sensitive topics that we investigate.
As part of her work, Deborah has studied how social media can be used to push the agenda of big agriculture in Brazil. Agronejo, she claims, is part of that picture.
Agronejo is quite effective in making hit songs.
Songs performed at events backed by the agribusiness industry itself. Songs turned into music videos, sometimes sponsored by companies in this sector.
The agribusiness industry, they are funding this genre because it helps them sell an idea of how people should be proud of agriculture production and how we need to defend these values in face of regulation and environmental protections.
Researchers like Deborah say that companies sponsoring Agronejo concerts or music videos amounts to evidence they are trying to influence how the wider industry is perceived by the public. Now, you could argue that all these companies want is to get the attention of potential customers, who, as it happens, tend to be Agronejo fans. But critics say there is a long and well-documented history of the industry trying to shape policy and public opinion in Brazil, be it through think tanks that lobby Congress or advertising campaigns that laud the sector.
This is a music style that many people like, and they just possibly listen to it because they like the music. They want nothing to do with the politics. There's nothing illegal about this style of music.
When you are selling ideology to people that are not really aware that they are the target of this ideological propaganda, then we need to be a little bit more cautious, I think.
I put Deborah's point to Agroboy. As they are open about partnering with companies in this industry, do they feel they're part of a propaganda effort?
Our name is Agroboy. We don't need to do paid propaganda, we do it for free. We celebrate agriculture, we're from the countryside, we don't need to be paid to do this.
The boys might be proud of their country's farming success, but there are those who are critical of the industry they portray. They say Brazil's rise as an agricultural powerhouse has come at a cost for the planet.
The Amazon has had its worst forest fires in 2 decades.
There's been an aggressive increase in deforestation.
No more tree canopy, the land stripped bare for planting crops.
So what does the data tell us? David Lapola is a research scientist at the University of Campinas in Brazil.
If we look only in the present or recent past, Brazil oscillates between being the 5th or 6th largest emitter of greenhouse gases.
The types of gases like carbon dioxide or methane that cause climate change.
If you look globally, most of the emissions, like 80%, comes from burning of fossil fuels. In Brazil, it's the opposite, because most of the emissions come from land use change, deforestation, and agriculture.
There's many reasons why Brazil's forests are being destroyed. Illegal mining, land grabbing, urbanization. But agriculture remains the key driver, with forest land being used for cattle pastures and for crops. This is a problem not only because forests absorb a lot of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, but also because when they're destroyed, they release all that trapped CO2 again, further warming the planet.
There's a lot of emissions come from deforestation, to which at least a part agriculture is related. There is a responsibility there, and there is a lot of emissions coming from the agricultural activities itself.
As the world went online, big agriculture has followed suit.
I think social media is a central arena for this ideological battle.
One that Deborah says is also being fought by agro-influencers. I've come across dozens of them in Brazil, on Instagram, on TikTok. The content they post shows them driving tractors, working the field, harvesting their crops, all sorts.
When we think about these influencers, they are selling a lifestyle and they are also defending economic importance of agribusiness online. And I think one of the most emblematic example is Camilla Telles.
Já faz tempo que eu não posto esse tipo de vídeo aqui, mas como quem teria que postar não posta...
Meu nome é Camilla Telles.
My name is Camilla Telles, and I have a background in public relations, but I like to be described as a rural producer, because that's what me and my family are about.
Então, eu nasci, né?
I was practically born on the farm. I am the third generation here on our rural property. I grew up watching my grandfather, my father, my grandmother, my mother. They worked actively here on the family farm.
Online, Camilla has built a reputation as a staunch advocate for Brazil's agribusiness industry. On Instagram, where she's got more than 400,000 followers, she often posts videos responding to celebrities who've criticized the sector or the impact it's had on the environment.
I saw that on social media. Many people with a lot of engagement, who are not connected to agriculture, ended up giving their opinions based on what they thought was true. And I started to counter this disinformation, right?
Camilla has happily embraced this mission to, in her words, fight disinformation against Brazil's agribusiness. But what exactly does she mean by that?
When I talk about disinformation, I mean a lot of guesswork. It's people not really knowing what they are talking about. It's like some artists, for example, who come out and ask people to stop eating meat, right? So that harms an entire sector, because they believe that this is the solution when it's not the solution.
Scientists from the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have said that eating less meat or fully switching to a plant-based diet could help fight climate change. David Lapolla again.
Reducing meat is very environmentally demanding in terms of water, in terms of land, and in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. I don't think we have to start saying people stop eating meat, but we could say, can you eat a little less meat?
Again, Camilla, it's not disinformation to say that scientists worldwide are calling for significant reductions in meat consumption to help fight climate change. You may or may not agree with it, but that is a fact. That's something that scientists are saying.
Yes, Marco, but there is also the part where science says that the biggest villain on the planet is fossil fuels, right? So we have an example of COP30.
The UN Climate Summit, which this year is being held in Brazil.
Several private jets will come to defend the environment. And then the blame always ends up falling on livestock farming. There is a path to sustainable livestock farming. That is also a scientific fact.
Not everyone sees what Camilla does as fighting fake news. In fact, in a 2022 report, researchers at NetLab, where Deborah works, listed Camilla as one of the big actors on Brazilian social media spreading disinformation about environmental topics.
She is a straightforward advocate for agribusiness, and she talks a lot about how we need to demystify soy as Brazil's enemy. For example, that, well, when you say you are against producing soy, for example, then you are against the development of the country.
E aí, time, tudo bem? Ó, essa é especial para quem enche a boca ou...
This is the TikTok post Deborah is talking about. In it, Camilla rails against the empty and desperate speeches of those who criticize soy production in Brazil. She shrugs off suggestions it may be harming the environment and lists instead all its economic benefits. Now, soybeans are Brazil's #1 export, but there is also evidence showing that hundreds of thousands of hectares of forests in Brazil have been cleared to make way for soybean plantations. Back to Deborah.
She has been a guest in several podcasts and profiles that are related to agribusiness. So she has been like an expert that has been invited to talk about this theme in other channels and profiles.
Clips of some of her podcast appearances have also been used by NetLab to back their suggestion Camilla Telles has spread disinformation. In one that I've watched, she criticizes the media for linking the agribusiness industry to deforestation and forest fires, and insists that most rural producers are actually law-abiding citizens. But critics might instead point to estimates that agriculture may account for as much as 80% of deforestation in some parts of Brazil, like the Amazon. In addition to running her farming business, Camilla made a career for herself as a public speaker. She also gives talks and seminars. She does events, some of which are industry events paid by companies in the agribusiness industry.
On your website, you name major Brazilian meat producers as some of your clients. What do you say to people who see you as pushing the messages they want you to push, regardless of facts?
These companies are my clients for talks, but I have never had a sponsorship from companies to generate content based on what they told me.
She also denies spreading disinformation.
I don't distort the facts. If people analyze my videos, I don't present agriculture as something perfect or without mistakes. And many times, the people who put me on this type of list are people who have no direct contact with agriculture or who do so out of ideology or political leanings.
Again, Deborah, someone listening to what you're describing might almost think there is a wider conspiracy at play, the way you describe how all these different agents work together to promote an ideology, when perhaps in fact it's just people who work in a sector who want to protect their way of life.
They are trying to sell an idea, to sell their right to live the way they do. The problem is that when they downplay the impacts agribusiness have on environmental protection, they are misleading users and followers.
In November this year, Brazil will be hosting the COP30 Climate Summit. World leaders will be heading to the city of Belém to discuss how to tackle climate change. Agriculture will be, as always, on the agenda, and the industry will have a seat at the table too. So understanding its attempts to influence public opinion has never been more important, whether that's through glitzy social media posts or catchy cowboy-themed songs. You've been listening to BBC Trending with me, Marco Silva. I produced and presented this episode. Hal Haynes did the sound mixing. Flora Carmichael was our editor. Thanks for listening and goodbye.